I just wasted like 20 minutes of my time. I just wasted 20 minutes of my time. God dang it, YouTube. You know, God dang it. I just. It is what it is. It's what I get for recording late at night. So, anyways, hi everybody. Philip the Great here, and today, this video is called Loneliness and Seeking Validation. Before I start the video, I would like to preface this by saying the reason why I'm being a bit more quiet than I usually would be is because I am living with other people right now, and plus it's late. So, you know, I don't want to be loud. And as you lovely people know, my voice is pretty loud. Like when it's normal. The bass projection in my voice is very, very, very loud, even when I'm speaking normally. So, I'm always loud, even when I don't want to be. Honestly, at this point, it's kind of a curse. I mean, you know, it's whatever. I mean, it's my voice. I can't do anything about it, but, you know, still, it's like, what the hell? I don't want. Yeah, there's just certain parts of the day I just want to be alone, and I want to talk without other people hearing me. Anyways, it is what it is. I thought I just heard some noise. Anyways, it is what it is. Hopefully I'm not bothering anybody. Hopefully. Anyways, so yeah, why is this video called Loneliness and Seeking Validation? Well, part of that right now is because I feel kind of lonely. Not going to lie. I feel pretty lonely right now, even though I'm living with two other people. You know, one of them being the owner of this apartment, and the other person being my roommate. You know, who's an awesome person. You know, I like them a lot. Yeah. The reason I'm saying that the reason that I feel a bit lonely is because this is the first time in my life that I'm living without my family. So my parents, my brother, like, they're not with me. They're far, far away, you know. So, you know, this is a part of growing up, right? This is a part of it, and it's kind of difficult right now, but, you know, I'll survive. You know, I'm only going to be here for a month, and then I'll be back living in the States, because right now I'm in Spain. So, yeah. Excuse me. So, you know, Jesus, why did I do, whatever. Anyways, yeah, dealing with the loneliness, it's, not great. I mean, I knew I would miss them like crazy, but man, it's really rough. I'm not going to hold you, especially right now. It's really rough, but it's all right though. I'll survive. Especially, you know, with my small but big, at least big to me, you know, YouTube audience that love to watch my videos. Anyway, so yeah, so the reason why there's loneliness in the title is because of that, but also, you know, throughout my entire life, ever since I was a child, I've always been kind of alone. Not in like Incredible Hulk, lonely man kind of thing, not in that particular way, but, you know, I've always been more isolated than the average child, I guess. I don't know, part of that is just because, you know, I'm a Gen Z kid, so, you know, I don't know, it's because of that, and the internet. I don't know if it's because of that or something else. So yeah, I've always been a bit more isolated than an average child. You know, growing up, I was always kind of pointed out as like the weird kid. Um, yeah, I've always been pointed out as like the weird kid, the one that would be quiet and people thought were, strange or didn't really want to be around. And, there are things I remember as a child, as like a little child, before middle school and high school. I remember a couple kids for a while used to bully me, and I would react by, you know, being angry and hitting them, which got me suspended. I remember, that I remember, I remember that some other kids didn't really want to be friends with me I mean, I don't remember the reasoning, but for some weird reasons, I remember, like, anyways, um, yeah, that's just me. Anyways, yeah, I remember some kids either didn't want to be friends with me or didn't want to play with me in like recess because they thought of me as like the weird kid or that one kid that's all alone, and because I have long hair, I mean, I was kind of like an outcast, I guess. I don't know. And because I like I was a little edgy when in sixth grade, I guess, or I wasn't really edgy. I just liked metal. Like, it was literally that. I liked metal music, and I would wear like denim jackets, and people thought I was weird. I don't know why. At least that's how that's how I remember it. At least, you know. So there was that, right? And again, I didn't, I remember, and as a child, I didn't have that many friends. Um, I had some friends, but it wasn't a lot. I didn't have a big circle. I because a lot of kids did not really want to be friends with me, and I think my parents noticed that, and they felt really bad for me, because I'm their child, right? So, I was very socially isolated just by that alone, that, and I used to have some emotional and anger problems because of that, because I was so isolated by society. I mean, I know it's a class, but still, right? By society, that, I kind of lashed out a little bit, I guess. And so, I guess it kind of started this trend in my life of me feeling kind of displaced, not like super lonely per se, but very displaced and very shy of trying to socialize with people. Even though it's a lot easier for me now, it's still really hard for me, honestly, because I do remember being socially rejected by my classmates and by society, it felt like. And I do remember this, I'm sure some other people can relate, is you remember how like you would do activities like recess activities or gym activities in like elementary school, and the kids would pick who they wanted in their groups. I was always picked last. Like, I'm not kidding. I was always the child that was picked last. Like, that's how I remember it. I was always the child that was picked last. Like, nobody wanted me. And I remember sometimes like my teachers would feel so bad for me that they would, you know, be my in my group or be my partner instead, because again, I'm pretty much, I'll be alone pretty much if they weren't with me. So so because of that, I was always more comfortable with adults, with older people, and of course talking to my parents a lot because I'm their child. That kind of started this trend where I would really have a hard time. I mean, it's not like that anymore per se, but for a long time, it was difficult for me to really um, get to really relate and to find common ground with people of my age, my age range and of my generation, Generation Z, because they rejected me. I was rejected. Like no one. I was kind of outcasted by the social hierarchy, by society. Again, I know it's elementary school, but still, it felt like that. And it made me kind of isolate myself socially later on. So, this trend kind of started of where, I had some friends, it was kind of the same thing in middle school. I had some more friends this time around, but it was still kind of the same. Kind of socially rejected. I was alone, you know, granted, I guess I started getting a little edgy because who never heard of a teenager that wasn't edgy, right? And so I was. I mean, no one hated me, but a lot. I still remember that some people thought it was kind of weird. So yeah, and then again, the only people that I really really got along with well that I remember is from a social standpoint, where other adults were my teachers that I could find common ground with and really relate to because they were the only ones that really, welcomed me with open arms. So there was that, I guess. Um, and then, in middle school, I started really using the internet a lot more as a social outlet, I suppose, because I didn't receive that, or was kind of banished from receiving that in middle school, with other kids. Um, you know, yeah. So that started happening. And then because of that, it started this trend in high school to where I only really socialized with other people on the internet, like in music, not like comment sections on YouTube, but when it comes to like music and stuff like that. And this is when I started my current, YouTube like video creating, like, because I had my first channel when I was like my first like real channel when I was like 15 in 2017. And yeah, everyone, my subscribers know the whole story. I don't really need to tell them, but or the short version is I had a previous internet persona due to this, and pretty much for most of high school, that's where I put my energy towards, just YouTube, because again, I was socially rejected. So my only social outlet was the internet. And high school for me was not that good. It was not that good at all. I mean, okay, it wasn't terrible. It was not terrible at all, but it wasn't great. The reason it wasn't like that is the reason it was like that. It was again because I, I I didn't feel the isolation as much, but I wasn't friends with that many people because of like what had happened to me previously, and it made me so shy to open myself to other people and to get along with them. I guess. I mean, like I could like I was already able to talk to people normally. Like I wasn't that shy, but in terms of like being like close friends and stuff like that, like I couldn't really do that, you know. Um, but I will say, as each year went on, I did start becoming like a little more social than previous, right? But, high school again, I was rejected. Like, how do I say it? I was more socially isolated. Nobody that I remember, like, I wasn't invited to the cool parties. I didn't go to prom. Nobody wanted me to be like a romantic partner in high school. You know, the girls that I was really into in high school didn't want me, right? Um, stuff like that. And, I was very insecure about myself. And, it would make me, every time I was socially rejected or, rejected, romantically speaking, I would kind of lash out to myself internally and just really get hyper fixated and emotional about it. Like, why can't anyone be cool with me? Why can anyone ever really love me in this kind of way? And because I wanted to know what it was like, right? So there's that. But oddly enough, senior year rolled around, or actually no, junior years happened, and I started becoming a bit more social with people, right? And this is when I finally tried to seek out people, but I was still socially rejected in certain circles, because I wasn't cool. Okay, that was a bit too loud. Because I was not cool, because, I was the weird kid, and because, some people, because I had long hair, which I still kind of do, you know, because I had long hair, some kids would call me, oh, look at the school shooter, that type of BS, right? So, I mean, granted, I didn't help myself either, but, still, it was irritating, right? So there's that. And again, I was on the internet a lot. I didn't, you know, I was on the internet because a lot more because, I didn't have much of a social outlet in real life. So I sought that out online. And through the online experience, I unfortunately ran into periods of one particular harsh period of cyberbullying that really messed me up for a while. It took me a long time to get over it. I won't get into what happened particularly because that's its own story. So, yeah. Um, yeah, I had a particular bad experience with you know, um, cyberbullying that messed me up for a while, and it took me a long time to get over it, but eventually I did for the most part. So yeah, but then senior year happened, and I remember senior year was interesting because this is when COVID happened. So we were all in, so everybody, we were all in our houses. So my entire senior year was online with Jesus, ow, with virtual classes and stuff. Virtual classes where you had to like turn the cameras on and everything like that. So, and everyone remembers the crazy things that happened with those kinds of classes, right? And whatever. So, anyways, that period happened, and that was finally the time where I started becoming a bit more social with people, albeit it was limited because it was only in the class, but I finally started, in like breakout rooms and with participation. I really wanted to validate myself and start seeking validation from other people that whose validation I didn't receive previously, right? I finally wanted to seek some of that out, and it finally started happening. Um, people thought finally people started thinking, like, besides my teachers who always loved me, at least most of them did, you know, um, besides my teachers, you know, finally other people, you know, especially some who I would never thought of me in any way. They finally started saying to me like, "Oh, Philip, you're cool. Philip, you're this, you're that. Oh, dude, you got the nice outfits on. Man, you're so interesting with the guitar playing and the ballet background and all that, you know." And so, for the first time in my life, I finally like felt cool, I guess, you know. And this started a trend where people finally started, ow, what the hell, where people started kissing my behind, pretty much. Okay, I don't mean to put it that way, but you get the point. Like, people finally started complimenting me, and I finally started receiving, the social validation that I really wanted, that I really desired as a child and as a teenager, because all of this finally started happening when I turned 18. So literally, when I finally became a legal adult, then all this stuff started happening. But again, it was very limited because it was senior year in COVID, so couldn't do much with that. But yeah, but unfortunately, not everything was fixed. I finally started getting some more friends. I met some pretty cool people through that, online schooling stuff. But unfortunately, dating was still a struggle for me. Still didn't have a girlfriend. Even though I tried to, you know, seek some of that, but again, it was limited, so I couldn't do much about it. So, yeah, it was yeah, whatever. So, yeah, that didn't really work out the way I hoped. But I thought, hey, you know, graduated from high school, now I'm going to community college. Maybe I can finally get a girlfriend, right? That's what I was thinking, and to have this seeking of social validation continue. I mean, I wasn't thinking of it that way, but in retrospect, right? That's what I was really wanting. So, you know, then community college happened. Um, was it ever, did it pan out the way that I hoped? Not everything, but it was a pretty good experience. Community college, I learned a lot from it. I've pretty much my entirety of community college, I was trying to play catch up with a lot of with either my friends that I already had, and the what is supposed to be the status quo of, like, society, or like the social hierarchy in terms of, like, young adulthood, right, where you're supposed to do all the stuff you did as an adolescent that could help you out in adulthood, right? So, being social, having friends, doing this, doing that, right? Because all of it is verbiage. I mean, all of it's being social, all of it's knowing people and whatever. So, right? Stuff like that. So I finally started, talking to more people, right? And, the validation continued for me. But again, because I was so socially inept, because, I wasn't social in high school, this is when I had to start learning, through experience about, people being, which people are your real friends, which one are your fake friends, which people are going to try to screw you over because of your personality, because my personality is, it's made me an easy target multiple times, again, ever since I was a child, when I experienced bullying for a while, people, because of my personality, and I guess because of my facial appearance, some people tend to think I'm really soft and kind of easy to take advantage of, So, socially, yeah. So because of that, I've had to learn the hard way with, which people I should keep around me, which ones I shouldn't, right? And, granted, I'm a bit of a stubborn person, but, I've matured incredibly over the last 5, 6 years, ever since I turned 18 years old. So there's that. And then there's dating. I've discussed about it in some previous videos, but my dating experience has not been great. I never been able to have a successful romantic relationship at all. I've been on several dates. I've had actual intercourse. Like I checked that out. Like whatever, but dating is just so incredibly hard, especially if you're, especially if you're just like a regular dude. It's really hard because because a lot of women. I don't want to sound like one of these idiot red pill guys, but it's kind of true, sort of. A little. Women do tend to have options. At least most women, right? Not all, but most. A good chunk of women tend to have options, right? At least that's the rhetoric, and, if you're like a regular dude, in college, who's kind of unemployed and, whatever, is trying to survive, it's kind of hard. It's pretty hard to find footing in dating and trying to kick down the door, per se. But, at the same time, there are other people I've known, other guys that were broke, kind of like me, but were still able to pull women. So then that's just a me problem, right? So, yeah. So, yeah, this stuff has continued, and, seeking validation. This is something I'm going to admit in front of the camera, but, I'm a pretty sensitive person. I'm a pretty sensitive person, because I'm so used to, because I seek validation a lot, um, because I seek so much validation. I'm so because I seek out so much validation. I end up getting hurt sometimes. And what I mean by that is that so far, ever since I turned 18, so many people have kissed my behind. I don't mean to put it that way, but you get what I mean. People have finally started complimenting me about my outfits, the little amount of social skills that I have. Me being a nice person, having cool outfits. Oh, Philip, you're so knowledgeable. Philip, you got such a cool background. Oh, dude, you're so chill. Stuff like that, right? I'm so used to people finally seeing me for who I am, which is all those cool things. I suppose. I mean, it's whatever. But yeah, I'm so used to that. Is because I'm so used to receiving that. When that doesn't happen, when the opposite happens, when somebody for some reason is passive aggressive to me or has some weird reason to hate me or dislike me. I just went through this experience this past semester. When somebody, actively doesn't like me, it kind of hurts. It kind of hurts, and I'm sensitive about it, and I can't stop, like, harping about it and just thinking about it all the time. Like, why didn't this person like me? Why did they dislike me? Why did they do this? Why were they rude to me? Stuff like that. And it's bad. It's not a good thing to do because it's wasting a lot of time, and it's and you're giving energy to a person who doesn't like you. But I'm very sensitive, so it, I tend to think about it for a while and not let it go. I'm very stubborn about letting go of things, especially if it doesn't go the way that I hope it would. Things would. So, yeah, you know, I'm a very sensitive person in that regard, and again, dating is just a struggle for me. I'm 24 and, pretty much I've never had a girlfriend, and part of it's my fault, back then, where I was at 18, I was very immature. I was still very immature and not really all the way there. Now I'm approaching it. I'm getting there. I'm learning every day. I'm growing, but still, I've had a lot to figure out by myself about myself. However, it still makes me a little bit insecure when I see like my friends or other people I know like on social media and whatever like post with their significant others and do all this lovey-dovey stuff or whatever the fuck, and I'm like, damn, why didn't that happen for me, man? Like, why is it happening for me? Like, I feel like I can, you know be a decent partner to somebody, but just hasn't happened, I guess. And yeah, it's just really irritating because again, social status quo, you're kind of viewed a certain way if you don't have certain things by a particular age. It's kind of weird, but you know, I think the reason I seek validation is so much, especially from a social standpoint and from a dating standpoint, is because in some ways I'm still kind of a hurt child, I guess. I guess I never really 100% got over how my early childhood went, with kids, with other kids, rejecting me and pushing me off the sidelines and outcasting me from their circles. And, I never really got over always being picked last and everything and always being viewed at as like the weird person, and then always, as some people having agendas against me, and, then in high school, being viewed as like the school shooter. I mean, it's not like I'm not, you know, still being viewed as weird, or some people still hating me for whatever reason they had. I don't freaking know. Stuff like that. Like I'm still hurt about not having the early childhood that I really wanted of everyone liking me, and people giving me validation socially, and I'm still thinking about it. What if I was able to date successfully in high school? What if I was more social then? How different would my life be? Like there's just a lot that kind of goes through my head with that, and it just, the older I get, it feels more like a handicap. I still don't have a girlfriend. I still am very sensitive. Oh, the chair. I'm still very sensitive, and I'm still seeking validation from from different sources, because I focused way too much time on the internet. So now, ever since I turned 18, I still feel like I'm trying to play catch up with everybody my age, and my friends, that did stuff like have big friend circles in high school, you know got their car, got their driver's license like early on at 16. People that were able to date in high school and able to successfully date in college. People that were able to figure their lives out and start making a lot of money. People that did the partying, the cool stuff, this and that. And had like all these miraculous stories they can tell their own coworkers and things like that. And for other friends and family. Like, honestly, I still feel like I'm trying to play catch up.
with that. Like, I still feel like I'm missing a lot of that. I don't have the cool, oh, I did this with my friend one time in this cave, or I did this in the woods and we got chased around. Like, I never had those cool stories. I never had that. I was never in college, in terms of college, like, I was never in the cool, frats. I was never in the cool big circles. I was never in the, um, like, I was never in the know of a lot of things, like, and again, with dating, it's such a big handicap. I don't want to keep harping on that, but it's kind of true, as a guy, the older you get, it starts getting harder to date, like, yes, yes, like, I've had actual intercourse. I've had actual intercourse. Yes, I've went on dates, but in terms of actually finally having a girlfriend, that still has not gone the way that I hope. And again, granted, part of that was because I used to be very immature. Back when I was still like, 18 through 22, like, I was still emotionally immature in a lot of ways because, again, I was a hurt child emotionally. So, I'm still trying to play catch up. I'm still trying to figure it out. And, maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't freaking know at this point, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm really trying, but yeah, it gets harder and harder, pause. It gets harder and harder the older I get, and coming to terms with being 24 and never having a romantic relationship. And then, and one thing that really pisses me off. Okay, this is probably a bit much, but one thing that really pisses me off is that, like, with my friends that I talk to, and they tell me about, like, their past relationships that they've had as in, like, high school and in college, and, like, oh, they did this with their ex, significant other or current significant other when they were, like, I don't know, 18, 20, 17, 21, whatever. They went to this cool place. Oh, you went to these cool places for dates and stuff like that. Like, oh, we went to this awesome dance party, or, because I missed out on prom. I never got to have the prom experience. I know that's a mixed bag, but, socially, it would have been cool to go, right? Stuff like that. Whenever I hear things like that, like, I get a bit insecure about it. I'm like, damn, that never happened for me. And, you know, I've heard so much advice that's worked for my friends, but, maybe it just doesn't work for me. I don't know, but yeah, it's a bit of a struggle. But, and especially in those lenses, I'm trying to seek validation through that. Like, hey, like, I'm a real man. Like, I can get a girlfriend, stuff like that. Because, if you're single for, like, years and years on end, you're kind of viewed in a weird way. I noticed, at least when you're in your 20s and you don't have a girlfriend. Like, some people, especially, like, people that you're close with, they'll start viewing you a bit weird. Like, why could you get this? Why could you get that? It's like, bruh, like, I don't know. I don't know why is it so hard. Like, but it is what it is. Um, yeah, I'm at 24. I still feel like that little kid, that little 7, 8-year-old kid that was, again, socially rejected and outcasted by all the other kids in his grade, and, never particularly got over it, I guess. And then in terms of the dating realm, it's, you know, I feel like, again, it's just starting to become a bigger and bigger handicap as I'm getting older, especially, when you have friends, when you have both guy friends and, girl friends, like, girls that you're friends with, like, and you hear them talk about their significant others, right? It's like I can't relate to that. I don't know how that feels, and it sucks because then it just pisses me off, especially when you start hearing like love songs and like you listen to love songs all the time and you just agonize for things that you never had. I guess I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, you know, still trying to seek validation. I guess at 24. I don't know. I don't know if it's just something I just have to get over and accept it, or you know, maybe I have to work on it a bit more and finally just live with it. But yeah. Anyways, I'm going to end the video right here. It's way too long, and yeah. But hey, I got one video done for the time being. Anyways, I hope you lovely people enjoyed the video, and yeah, man, appreciate my commentary. Anyways, yeah, that's it. I'm gonna go. Alright. Peace out, you guys. Nos vemos. Felipe is out of here. Philip the Great is out of here.